Welcome to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. Legal issues simplified through real client stories and real-world experiences. Creating simplicity in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to another episode of the Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd.
As a business and healthcare law firm, we represent clients in multiple sectors and multiple specialties, especially healthcare.
Yep.
This season, we are searching for common ground for our diverse audience, and we will be bringing in many guests to help us. This season's theme is the universal language, business.
That's awesome. Michael, fun fact, today's guest is our first Three-Peat on our podcast.
Speaking of Three-Peat, Brad, I have an interesting story about the NBA and the history behind the Three-Peat. It actually connects to our guest's two passions, the Chicago Bulls and the law.
All right, I'm thinking the law might be a little bit of a stretch to call a passion of his, but I'll allow it for right now.
Fair point. But he does think compliance is cool.
Actually, he thinks compliance is cool, and I think he has it tattooed on his biceps. So tell me about how the NBA and the law are combined here.
So there have been a half a dozen teams in the NBA to win 3 championships in a row. Half of them were coached by Phil Jackson, and 2 were for the Chicago Bulls. He had his third three-peat with Kobe and the Lakers.
All right, Michael, I think we made our first major mistake of our podcast and all those seasons. We should not have mentioned the Chicago Bulls. Our guest probably is now salivating, thinking we're going to be talking about Air Jordan, a.k.a. Michael Jordan, for the rest of the show. I don't even know. All right, let's get back to what you said, though. What does the law have to do with Three-Peat?
That's a great question. Back in the late 80s, Pat Riley with the Lakers had won 2 championships in a row for the Lakers, and he went ahead and trademarked the term Three-Peat.
Whoa, wait, all right. Three-Peat. First off, I can't even imagine trademarking Three-Peat. That's kind of a funny one. Second, talk about confidence in his team. They just won 2, and he's already trademarking the third before he even won the championship. And for our young audience who probably doesn't know who the hell Pat Riley is, he was a very dominant coach before Phil Jackson arrived. And back then, Pat was running the Lakers, known as the Showtime era.
Yeah, they had Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. They were the team of the 80s. Them and the Celtics duked it out.
Yep.
The Lakers actually lost the next season when trying for their three-peat. So the trademark by Pat Riley didn't actually end up making a bunch of news. However, a few short years later, the Bulls had a three-peat.
All right, so how does that work with Pat Riley owning the trademark?
Well, according to my deep research by Googling it, he made licensing fees every time a Bulls fan buys a shirt with a three-peat on it, or anyone buys it. There's a shirt printed with a three-peat on it. And apparently he made over $300,000 in licensing fees off the first three-peat. I couldn't find anything on the internet about how much he made when the Bulls did it again, but I can only guess that the price went up.
Oh, man. Well, do you know if he ever trademarked four-peat? Because if not, I think we should jump on it. All right, before we file for some new marks, let's bring on our mystery guest. Who do we have this week?
We are joined this week by our law partner, Alex Thiersch.
Yeah, he looks familiar.
He is a three-peat. He is a Bulls fan. Perhaps a little less important, but still important. He's the founder of the American Med Spa Association. He's the managing partner of the ByrdAdatto Chicago office. Graduated from the University of Iowa. Went to DePaul University College of Law. He was an employment lawyer early in his career before coming to the light and practicing in the healthcare world with a little employment twist, and then founding AmSpa. He has his own podcast called The Medical Spa Insider, married to his wife, Tony, passionate about dogs and Michael Jordan and I guess the law. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, Alex, welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here on the Three-Peat podcast. I can't wait to jump into which team is better. The first the 91 through 93 bowls or the 96 through 98 bowls, I think that'll be make for a great conversation. I personally think the first Bulls team was better, which is kind of a opinion that not many people share, but I'll stick by it.
Ooh, fair enough. And I guess technically, if we were to make up a shirt to celebrate this three-peat of you being the third time on our podcast, we would have to pay licensing fees to Pat Riley.
It's totally worth it. It's totally worth it.
Yes, we'd make a lot off of it.
I mean, I thought the real question was how much money of that $300,000 was Alex's alone with the number three-peats jerseys he's bought.
Well, Michael, you can just pay him in cash and it'll be fine.
Yeah. All right. Well, so this is your third time on. So people have heard, you were on our very first episode that we had back at the beginning of our podcast. Yeah. And so people may have heard your background before, but would love we're trying to connect these common themes. And you have obviously run law firms, you've run a trade association. But tell us a little bit more kind of your professional story.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me back. I'm honored to be the first three-peat guest. I'm not even sure what to say about that. Super duper duper excited. And by the way, you guys are so professional and like practiced in your opening. It makes me feel very, very incompetent because on mine, I'm nothing like that. It's just kind of jibber jabber. I spit, I stutter. It's just you guys are on point. But anyway, enough about you. Let's talk about me, right?
Yes.
So I like to say I'm a recovering lawyer, which is not entirely true because I am still, in fact, licensed, and I do now and again brush off the law books and practice a little bit. But basically, my story is I kind of stumbled onto the med spa industry about going on 15 years ago with a client of mine that I got when I opened my own practice. And I kind of found out what this industry was all about. And most importantly, I found out that not only was it an incredibly lucrative and quickly growing industry, but also it was just kind of bare of and there were no resources for these folks to rely upon. There were a lot of people who were practicing and doing things illegally, and they were doing it unwittingly. They had no idea where to go, how to find it. So that's kind of was the genesis of AmSpa. It was our desire to summarize as best we could and provide guidance to med spas and med spa owners on how to operate compliantly and correctly and safely. And we kind of sometimes you just in the right time at the right place with the right product, and off it went, and kind of the rest is history. Of course, at some point I met you two fine fellows, and that really is what made it click. But there's a bunch of steps in between, but basically that's where we are now. AmSpa, we are inching up towards 4,000 members, wow, which is going to be very exciting. We, as you guys know, we do the medical spa show. We just had our fifth annual medical spa show last January. Our next one's coming up end of January 2023 at the fabulous Wynn Hotel and Casino. And we do a bunch of other stuff, boot camps to train folks on business and the law, webinars. I mean, everything. If you want to get in the industry, or if you are in the industry and you need help, that's what we do.
And fun fact what was the original name of your trade association? Was it the Illinois?
Oh, yes. Well, yeah, I skipped that step because,
that was so long ago.
But originally, I had the Illinois Med Spa Association, which was a fabulously successful, long-running, multi-billion-dollar association that basically failed after 18 months or so. But what was good about it was that was what kind of plugged me into the nationwide need for this association. And everything is trial and error, and in that instance, by creating the Illinois Association and doing some events and looking at the compliance tools and starting to advertise it, what we discovered very, very quickly was that there were folks from all over the country who needed the same kind of help. And ding, a light bulb went off, and I was like, oh, maybe we could do this in other states too. And that's what happened.
That's really smart marketing if you're going to go national, to change it from Illinois to American.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'd like to say that was an easy decision, but it took me about 6 to 8 months of tinkering before I figured out that I could just change the name. I did like the way AmSpa rolled off the tongue.
Yeah.
But at the same time, in some ways, at first, at least, that was a bit of a challenge because everyone thought we were just a spa association. And so I had to, that's why I would keep writing out the American Medical Spa Association. But solid point, Michael. Solid point.
Good job, Michael.
Yeah.
All right. So now we have this long, illustrious career, as an attorney, and then overnight you become this giant booming success of the Illinois Med Spa Association to eventually become the American Medical Spa Association. One of the things that we're working with all our guests this year is really finding what commonalities did you experience from the law practice that you're applying in the same thing in the AmSpa world.
Yeah, well, a quick caveat, the first law practice I had, I don't think I really ran it all that well. So that's one thing. And thankfully I have you two to kind of take most of the burden, because I'm not sure I would be that great at running a law practice. But I do think in the end, I was thinking about this before we got on, business is business, and it's all very much having an idea and a product that solves some sort of a problem that is part of some sort of a niche that allows you to get clients or customers, whatever you want to call them, and then service those customers and keep those customers. And it doesn't matter what business you're in; those are kind of the three components that you always have to come up with: is getting them, servicing them, and keeping them. So a law firm is obviously different in that the services you're providing are very specific to what people need, and it's much different than what we're doing. But in the end, it's and I've seen this a lot through what ByrdAdatto has done and the way it's grown. There's still the marketing component, there's still the client relations and client retention component, communication component. All of those are always present, and along the same lines, there's always the absolute need to have some sort of a handle on your numbers, as well as the plan. And really, those two things often are I think are very interchangeable, because the numbers inform the plan, and the plan helps define the numbers. So, regardless of what business you're in, you've got to be able to put together what your idea is, put that plan in place, and then make sure you have enough money in order to make it work.
Yeah, and then I know just from running businesses with you in the past, you used to sandbag us and talk about how you were an English major and so you didn't know the numbers. But you always, even if your role was not directly with putting together, profit and loss statements, you always had an understanding, enough of an understanding of what the numbers were to help, shape whatever vision you were trying to go after.
Well, that's gotten a lot better as I've gotten older, because at first I still lament. I had one of my uncles I talked to right when I had started my own firm said to me, you should really take like a basic bookkeeping or accounting course or some sort of just basic finance course to fit, and I was like, what does he know? He's never done a business. I got this. This is easy. And then within, 6 months, actually within a couple of years of not doing that, I realized he was absolutely right. So you get, it's weird. Like with anything in that requires some experience, people tend to have to learn and find out for themselves, right? So people can tell you all the time, learn your numbers, do this, do that. But until you get into it and really feel it and experience it, it doesn't make sense. So over the years, it's really started to become apparent to me that if I didn't get a handle on the numbers, there's no way I was going to succeed, or at least succeed at the level that I knew I could. So it's absolutely essential. And if I can do it, you can do it, because I am really bad at math. Ask my wife. Some of the calculations I'll do like out loud when we're thinking about something are just pathetically bad. It's just like there's absolutely no way that someone could come up with that answer, and I come up with it. But luckily we have calculators and Excel, and we have people that can help us. But truly, anyone who's looking to start a business, that is a problem you have to be able to solve.
So you're saying numbers matter?
Well, I mean, they absolutely matter. I mean, really, that's kind of the thing is, you have to be able to measure yourself against something, and you have to be able to measure what you're doing in order to see that you're achieving any goals. And if you're not measuring, then how are you going to possibly know? Yeah. And if you don't know, then there's no way to adjust. So it's not, some people get this intuitively. I think honestly, there's really, I've always found this, maybe you guys think this is, can agree or disagree, but really you've got two types of people. You've got the people who are kind of like me, who maybe aren't quite as good at numbers and are good at kind of the idea generation and maybe some of the client gathering and things like that. Then you've got the folks who maybe are trained and then they're an MBA, they're really good at numbers, but they kind of sometimes lack the whatever that is to be able to make the idea become an actual business. You've got to be able to figure out what your strengths are and then find someone else to help you on the other side. Otherwise, because most people don't have both. And if they tell you they have both, I would, they probably got some real estate to sell you also.
Agree with you on that. Well, Alex, let's talk about one of the proudest business strategies or accomplishments you've had in any of the industries that you have been a part of.
Well, I'll tell you what. There's a lot that I could go with, and I was just thinking, just from expanding to AmSpa from the Illinois Med Spa Association to the various, to finding you guys and being able to commit and work something out with you after some of the other firms that I've been to. But I think the one that I'll go with was one that you were both involved with tangentially and then became majorly involved with, is when we decided, Kathy Christensen and I decided, Kathy's our COO, to kind of go all in and do the Med Spa show, which was at the time, if you were to look at it from just a basic cost benefit analysis standpoint, or if you were on the outside and looking at what we were doing, you probably would have thought we were crazy and we were on the verge of bankrupting our entire company. But the time was right. We just knew we had to do something bigger. We knew we had to do something that if this company was going to grow to where we thought it could, we had to do something big. And so that's when we decided to just kind of on a whim, last minute. I mean, we planned it and executed in, I think, about 6 months. And it was right after our relationship started. We didn't have any staff. It was just Kathy and I and maybe like Allie and Eric, a few other folks. So we had like 4 or 5 people, and we just kind of bootstrapped this thing together in Vegas. And it turned out to really be kind of the final like rocket booster that has taken AmSpa to where it is today. And so that's that. I would say it's it's another kind of a specific answer for just being able to recognize when there's an opportunity, and then you've got to be able to have the guts and the wherewithal to just do it. This is anytime you run a business, there's risk, and you've got to be able to accept and take on some risk if you want to be successful. No one is going to be successful by playing it totally safe. So you've got to just sometimes be like, all right, let's do it. And as you know, that has turned out to be just a huge benefit for the industry and for us and for everybody.
And go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, Brad and I both are probably chomping at the bit to talk because we experienced that risk like real time, because we happened to be with you guys in Vegas when you went to look at the space. And Brad and I were looking at each other as we toured this space thinking, this is absolutely crazy. I mean, this is what grown-ups do, renting this space and of course the financial commitment that went with it. And it's just to remember that moment so clearly, and to see what has become of the Med Spa show and how important it is to the industry is such a huge hat tip to being bold if you have a vision and you believe in it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I remember being in the room in Chicago when you pitched it to us. Y'all are very methodical as to the why that y'all needed to do it. And the funny thing is, for our audience to understand, like up to that point, our biggest AmSpa event ever was 50 people, I think, or something like that.
At the most.
At the most in Dallas, Texas. And you needed 200 people to show up to even break even or something like that, if I have that right in my head.
More than that. Yeah. No, we had, up to that point, we'd been doing boot camps, and normally we're talking 30 to 35 people, and we needed one room.
Yeah.
So there was no real complexity.
Right.
And then, Michael, to your point, like, we were like, we're going to do this big. So we got, we went to the Aria. This was a beautiful hotel, beautiful space. And we had, all these rooms. And I'm sitting there going, this is going to cost us how much and how, and we needed to get, I think close to 300 people to really make it work. And we did, and we didn't get much more than that, but we got enough, and that's, you got to start somewhere. So,
well, I think you're sandbagging. I mean, people were trying to get in that first one because you had to close it off. And I mean, it was crazy. I mean, Brad wouldn't know because he didn't bother to show up.
The prequel,
yeah,
that it didn't really count the way I always looked at it.
Yeah.
That was the warm up, since I couldn't be there for the main event, which is now we're only 4 years in. This coming year will be our 5th.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were gonna change the name to the ByrdAdatto show, but now it's just the Bird Show because you weren't there for the first one. Sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess, looking at the whole history of the time we have spent together with Alex, it has been amazing to watch you with your legal career. And it's obviously, as you said, still it's operational in that sense with our Chicago office, but to be able to see with the accelerant, as you said, that you were able to put on to the American Medical Spa Association, to see, to wander down the halls of the Aria, and then now to the Wynn. When you're walking next to Alex, it's like walking next to a rock star. It's kind of fun to see the.
Tell me more, Brad.
To see the people flock to the Mr. Alex, and the most amazing part of all of that is when I was telling everyone, "Don't worry, he'll be a three-peat. He'll join us again on our podcast." So that was why we'll probably have 4,000 people listen to this podcast alone, just because you showed up.
Well, that's absolutely true. This podcast is really kind of my raison d'etre for doing things. But what's interesting though is, and I've seen this with ByrdAdatto, and really it's any business, is that there's always these inflection points that you get to where you've come a certain distance, you've met whatever goal that you've tried to meet. And then you kind of have that next step. And the question is, are you going to take that step or are you not? Like you guys, you took a flyer on AmSpa and on me, which was a huge gamble on your part. And it's like, at some point, any business is going to have to make that decision. You're going to come to a point where it's you're going to go in one direction or another direction. And, the fortune favors the brave. So I'm always in favor of, just go for it.
Well, I can't agree more. I mean, that's all some really good points about running a business. Unfortunately, with all businesses, there's risk involved. And as you said, and sometimes you really have to take a big leap. And so you've proven that.
Yeah. And it's, again, it's a lot of this is just knowing what you don't know. And in some sense, the businesses that I see that have failed, or the people that we've worked with who maybe haven't met it, oftentimes you can point to a point where they just kind of got out over their skis, or they thought they knew more than they did, and they didn't get the help in that they needed at the time, or they thought they could do everything themselves. And it's at some point you've got to just understand that you can't do it, and there's things that you need help on. For instance, for the longest time, I was Renee Coover, who was part of the original Illinois Med Spa Association and AmSpa. We were handling all the legal work that came in. We were trying to do everything, and it really wasn't until we got together and ByrdAdatto, who was able to handle that work, was able to take that burden off of me so that I could run the company fully. And that's a huge huge piece of the puzzle that I don't think we ever talk about enough, is because without me being able to focus solely and being able to refer people to a law firm and to lawyers that I knew were competent, understood the industry, that the AmSpa we wouldn't have been able to do the medical spa show. We wouldn't have been able to do any of this. So it's kind of cool. It's a good synergy. So find a good partner too. That's the other lesson.
Yep. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I can't believe we've got 25 minutes that's flown by. It feels like we just started. So what we'll do is we'll say bye to the end of interviewing you for your Three-Peat, and we'll go into commercial. Now, the other side, we can add any legal insights that we want to add, and we'll look forward to the Four-Peat.
I don't think Three-Peat is trademarked. Hashtag rights reserved. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
All right.
Great job.
Thank you.
Bye, Alex.
Many business owners use legal counsel as a last resort rather than as a proactive tool that can further their success. Why? For most, it's the fear of unknown legal costs. ByrdAdatto's Access Plus program makes it possible for you to get the ongoing legal assistance you need for one predictable monthly fee. That gives you unlimited phone and email access to the legal team, so you can receive feedback on legal concerns as they arise. Access Plus, a smarter, simpler way to access legal services. Find out more. Visit ByrdAdatto.com today.
Welcome back to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd. Now, Michael, this season, we are searching for common ground. Our theme is Three-Peat. No, I mean the universal language of business. And we had our good friend, our law partner, and the founder of American Medical Spa Association, Alex Thiersch, on, who, again, was the first and only so far Three-Peat. So it was great having Alex on, catching up. It was really good to hear how much he likes me more than you. That was probably my favorite part of the episode. Just go back and listen. You'll hear it. But he had so many interesting things that he was talking about. And I think one of the things that we both kind of took away with when you're growing, you start off with one idea. This is who we are. This is where we want to go. And it shifts. All of a sudden, you're changing your name. You're changing everything surrounding it. Well, what things did you put in place to protect either that initial name or the name that he scaled to, American Medical Spa Association? What are the things that our clientele, our audience think about when it comes to these types of marks?
Yeah, and you hear the word trademark, and so people, think, well, what is that? I mean, I want some of that. If I go out and trademark Three-Peat, which, by the way, sounds like Alex just did.
Yeah, I think I heard that
too. Then I'm going to make a windfall on licensing fees, and it's obviously that's kind of your lottery ticket type example.
Yeah.
With the Pat Riley story, but understanding what a trademark is probably the place to start, which is it's a law. There's state laws, and then there's a federal law that's the most commonly referenced, governed by the United States Patent and Trademark Office, that gives some higher level of protection to people that own superior rights to a name or a brand, and so their word, a mark.
Yeah.
And so, but what makes it important is actually having that mark or that brand name and using it.
Yes.
And so when he started using the American Med Spa Association, or AmSpa, he was putting a stake in the ground, in some way to the world that this is mine. And if someone had been using it before him, they would have a superior claim potentially over him. That's a bit important factor. But what the trademark process does is it helps you tell the world that shout out to the world, spread the word that you've put this stake in the ground, so to speak, with whatever your name is, and the body of law around it gives you some heightened protections. But it becomes so important, going back to your question, Brad, when you start developing the strategy and you start developing the name, I mean, you want to start, using it, putting it out into the marketplace. Same when you change your name, you're kind of starting over. I mean, Illinois Med Spa Association doesn't really do anything for AmSpa now. And so he had to start over at that point in time. And that's the same for any businesses. They're looking at, their trade name, their brand, or a certain product.
Yeah, and the steps you go through, there's a whole process that you go through. And as you said, there are state ones, which is great because that only protects you within your own state. So if you are planning to do commerce outside your state, you should definitely look in going to United States Patent and Trademark Office and going through that process of protecting that mark. Michael, unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. It was really great catching up with Alex. He's just too much fun. Well, audience, guess what? Next week, we'll be back again. We will have the A-team from Cosmetic Physician Partners join us. Thanks again for joining us today. And remember, if you like this episode, please subscribe, make sure to give us a 5-star rating, and share with your friends.
You can also sign up for the ByrdAdatto newsletter by going to our website at ByrdAdatto.com.
ByrdAdatto is providing this podcast as a public service. This podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast does not constitute legal advice, nor does it establish an attorney-client relationship. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by ByrdAdatto. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Please consult with an attorney on your legal issues.